Okay, this afternoon we're talking to Ron Irvine as part of the Oral History Project with LGMA, and we'll just kick off. Obviously, we're talking to Ron Irvine. What was your date of birth, Ron?
22nd of March 1938.
When did you join LGMA, or it might have been the IMM at the time?
It was IMM. Not sure the actual date, would have been about 1960, 61, something like that.
Actually, and why did you join IMM?
Well, I was working with Brisbane City Council, and you needed to have some sort of local government qualification to advance your career at all. So
Yes.
I started studying for the local government clerk certificate, as it was then, and met members of the IMM, as it was then, and they suggested it would help if you joined. So
Seemed like a good thing to do at the time.
yeah,
And looking back, has that turned out to be a good thing?
yes, it was. It was advantageous in getting some information available, which was sort of not the book type stuff, experienced people you're talking to.
Yeah. And that's sort of what I was saying with this oral history, is getting that, talking to those people, getting that opportunity to learn from others, and that networking I found have been a very good thing too. Okay, so and what year did you retire from the workforce?
1993, at the amalgamation of the Gympie City Council and the Widgie Shire.
Ah, and so you were actually out before all the other amalgamations too?
Yes.
So when, with the other amalgamations, Gympie took over Kilkeevan?
Yes, I think it was what the Widgie Shire and Gympie City Council became one, and then I think it was certainly Kilkeevan. I don't know whether it was one up further towards Maryborough as well. There was a small shire up there, and I can't think of the name of it, but I think it.
Wuku? Was it Wuku one? Oh, that went to Fraser Coast.
Yeah, no, it wasn't Wuku.
Okay, so just getting a brief history or a feel of your career, and I actually personally, before we turn this on, I actually asked that question, but how did you get into local government?
Only as a junior to get a start in getting a job. I went to applied to Brisbane City Council and got in there as a junior clerk in the Department of City Administration and in the Central Records section of that.
And was Brisbane City Council looked upon as being a very secure employer at the time?
Probably, yeah, but in that lower level it was. As you worked your way up, it got a bit more dicey.
A bit more cutthroat. All right. So from Brisbane City Council, where did you go to? Did you work your way up through the ranks there from records?
In Brisbane City Council, yeah, I finished up in a fairly senior position as Secretary and member of the Council Administration Board, which was an officers board which reported directly to the town clerk and then through them to the Lord Mayor's office.
So was that like special projects, or did it have a particular jurisdictional area?
Mainly projects in regard to land resumption and in the leasing and operation of council parks and gardens. If you as a sporting club wanted to lease,
Yes.
say, of a football field,
Yep.
it was up to that board to decide whether you would get it or not. But a lot of their legal stuff was the resumption of land. There was a lot of land resumption going on in that.
So to help facilitate other development? Okay.
Other council development, yeah.
Yep. So from Brisbane City Council, so you worked up to that level there, and then from Brisbane City Council you went to...
Gympie City Council.
Okay. And what was your role there at Gympie?
I went there as a deputy town clerk.
Yep.
As I had become qualified, and there was no advancement in Brisbane City Council unless you waited years. Yeah.
Well, had to wait for someone to die.
Yeah, exactly.
So an opportunity came up at Gympie? and you applied for that?
Mm.
Or was that more or less through that networking and
No, it was just they were advertising.
Yep.
Their deputy had retired actually, resigned from local government, and they were looking for a replacement. So I applied and was fortunate enough to.
Yeah, get it.
Get
Never
it.
look back, because from there you were mentioning that you then transitioned into the role of the CEO.
Yeah, I was there about 6 years, and the then town clerk left to go to New South Wales. He
Of
took,
all places.
yeah, he took a job down there, down between Sydney and Canberra.
Oh, okay. Wow. So you had quite a number. Actually, how many years were in local government totally then?
Probably nearly 40.
40. Wow.
Uh-huh.
You would have seen a lot of change through local government during that time.
Yeah, a lot of change occurred in Brisbane City Council in respect to the staff, and there was a lot of political infighting down there, and that's one of the worst things, in my opinion, of local government, is to have political parties involved, and it was with the Clem Jones era that was
Yeah.
very political, and that filtered down to staff.
Yeah. And I think, obviously in Brisbane City Council, where there are some very designated political parties and involvement, you still get a lot of politics even in the smaller councils. Did you notice that at Gympie?
Not very much at all.
Okay.
No.
Right, so the people were there for the community.
Well, the mayor at the time had tried, or was trying to develop a political career in the state government,
Right.
but he trod on somebody's toes and he lost his endorsement.
Bad career move. Yeah.
So he then tried to make a bit of a political career out of being the mayor.
Right. How long was he there for? How many terms?
He was there for about 2. I was there for just over 14 years, and I only had to work for 2 mayors in that time.
You only had to break 2. You only had to break 2 in that.
Yeah.
Righto. So during that substantial local government career, what was some, or who were some of your role models during that time?
The town clerk of Brisbane City, Tom McCauley,
Yeah.
he and his deputy, Ian Hawes, they gave me a lot of encouragement to sort of get a career and get going out of Brisbane City Council, you know. So Tom McCauley was a big help to me.
So you obviously you were able to learn a lot from them, just observing how they went about discharging the role of deputy and CEO.
Yeah, and because their role was quite different to the CEO or town clerk, as I was called then. As the town clerk in Brisbane City Council and the town clerk in the outside council, fairly significant difference. So, for example, the town clerk that never attended council meetings.
Oh, you didn't?
No,
Okay.
he wasn't required to.
So was there a council officer that did attend the meetings?
There were 2, one of which I was at one stage. There were 2 of us, which were called committee clerks, and they attended the meeting
And what was their function then?
to what would have been the town clerks, to give
Okay.
advice,
Yep.
watch the legalities of whatever was going on, give advice to the chairman of the council, who was not the Lord Mayor. The chairman of the council was another alderman, as they were called then,
Wow.
altogether. It's a big difference.
So the function of the Brisbane City Council, or the CEO for Brisbane, was obviously deemed to be too large and was broken up. Those functions were broken up, were they?
His office had a connection between his office and the Lord Mayor's, and he virtually was most of the time dealing with the Lord Mayor. Yeah. And the department I was in was the Department of City Administration. I was in the town clerk section of the Department of Administration, so it was sort of right in the heart of the place, you know.
And it sounds like there was a number of CEO functions, like you were saying. Most of those, well, correct me if I'm wrong, most of those functions that you would have vested in the CEO's role, say for Gympie, that was spread
Yeah.
in Brisbane City Council.
Yeah, see, like going to Gympie City Council, I attended most committee meetings,
as well.
but the town clerk never attended those either.
Oh,
So as the committee clerks attended the committees, the
Yes.
Works Committee, Finance Committee,
yes,
and they then reported back
to the council.
to the council meeting. Yeah.
Okay. And that has changed at some councils, but I think the committee structure is still seen as a very good structure to have,
Yeah.
because it's very hard for all knowledge to be vested in one individual councillor or alderman, and with those committee structures it enables some people to specialise in a particular area.
Yeah, well, I changed the system up there at Gympie that they used to require the town clerk to go to all committee meetings, so I changed that. I didn't see any point in me going to the Works Committee, for argument's sake. That was all the engineers area.
Yep.
So I sent we had a administration officer, his title was, he would go there and keep the minutes and things like that. And
Keep the order.
yeah, and keep and prepare the minutes and that, which were then sent to me, and then they would go to the council.
Yeah, so you were still keeping control on what was going on in that committee, but you didn't need to be there.
No, that's true.
Right. Yeah, so you had some significant role models there at Brisbane City Council. What changes did you observe in your time in local government, whether that be from a regulatory field or political field, or even just in technology?
The biggest change that which didn't happen, which was very close to happening, was in the time of Gough Whitlam. He was taking action to do away with state government. He actually was putting in place, and to start that, he was promoting regional councils.
Yes.
And we had a couple of the councils in our area up there had a couple of meetings with officers from probably the local government department about how this could come about. But
Wow.
the actual aim of the whole thing, which we weren't told directly, but they could see what he had in mind, and it was a good move. We don't, to my opinion, it's a waste of time and money having state governments, really.
During your long period with local government, I'm sure you've got some great stories to tell. Is there any that we can put on film that come to mind about some of the highlight stories that you've got?
Well, I can tell you, don't get involved in politics. I was in Brisbane City Council, going back to them again. I was accused of being a member of the Liberal Party, and this is true. One alderman said to the mayor that you've got to watch Irvine, he's a member of the Liberal Party, he's a secretary of a local branch. That's what was...
And were you?
No, no, I was never.
Bit of a slanderous accusation?
Yeah, but it was never put to me straight off.
Personally,
It was told, the town clerk was told it,
Yes.
and he just asked me
Were you?
quietly,
Yeah.
was I a member? I said, Tom, I've never been a member of any political party.
Yeah.
But they didn't take any notice of that. But then they revamped the administration board, and I was secretary and a member of that. I was removed as member and left as secretary because of
That sort of conflict of interest.
because of being accused of that. It didn't make any difference salary-wise, and there were only two positions in the Brisbane City Act that couldn't be removed. And that was one of them was the secretary of the administration board. So they couldn't dismantle that position. So I was there to stay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was the CEO the other position that they couldn't dismiss?
No, the other one was the secretary of the registration board.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the town clerk was dismissible. The position of town clerk,
Okay.
but no.
On the same scale of the mayor alone? Or had
No, the E&C committee, as they used to call it, Establishment and Coordination Committee, that was like cabinet. That was the equivalent of the state government cabinet,
Okay.
and they have to do it, and then would have to go through council on the recommendation of the E&C committee.
So if he did want to get rid of the CEO, then he would have had to have bolstered all the assistants from all the other councillors. Okay. All right. Well, that's one story. I'm sure Brisbane will provide some others. Any other stories that come to mind? Whether good or bad?
Not. See, Gympie was pretty docile after being in Brisbane City Council.
So Brisbane was a good training ground then?
Yes, it really was. And there was another member of, I don't know whether you've heard of it, Irvine. He was the deputy at Redcliffe City Council. He was the chief clerk, and he was sort of my immediate superior.
Yep.
And he got out of there about 3 months before I did. He went to...
So he obviously did the Shy Clerk certificate as well. Which is a bit I've heard from actually the other gentleman I interviewed, Ian Anderson, that, and I've heard it from other people too, there's a bit of a shame that local government Shy Clerk certificate is still not around. Because there's some people coming into local government from the private sector who have a lot of good skills, but they just don't understand.
Local government?
Yeah, because local government's a very different beast.
You can say that again, yeah. People coming from outside without experience, it would be pretty hard, because particularly if you've got a senior position where you are involved with the elected members, that's pretty dangerous.
Bit of a minefield. All right. So during that time, what were some of the major achievements that you were proud of overseeing, whether even the time of Brisbane City Council or with Gympie?
Well, with Gympie, probably introduction of computerisation in the Gympie City Council.
Yeah.
Introduction of a complete set of administration bylaws. I rewrote or reviewed and redid all their bylaws, because they had been there since Adam was around.
So we talked about some stories. What about any low lights, or what's the worst thing that you can remember about a local government career?
I'd probably have to go into that time I was talking about with Brisbane City Council. It affected everybody.
So that political involvement?
Yeah, it went on for months, and it sort of unsettled everybody, except the junior levels didn't worry them, but anybody in the manager of a department even, which was a pretty big position, nobody knew who was going to be next, and it didn't matter what you did, it was all because of bloody politics.
Yeah.
And it was the politics that was the worst.
What were some things that really worked for you?
In what way?
Probably, fulfilling that role, what were some of the key, key mantras or key things that you always remembered and it stood you well in that role? Like communication or...
Involvement with the community was a big thing. I suppose being, you're the only town clerk in the whole city, and you could help without bringing council stuff in it. You became involved, like I went to a member of the Lions Club, and we helped with the setting up through the Lions Club of the that country and music festival they have.
Yes.
Yeah,
which is now huge.
Yes, huge.
The Gympie Music Muster.
Yeah, well, through Lions, and that's being a member of Lions through, bits you could do through the council to help them. Was there for the very first one with the Lions Club, which was out in the Webb Brothers property where it started.
Yep.
And,
okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Out at Widgie.
So is that about being seen as the CEO to be in the community, or is that just needing to make that contact of networks within the community?
I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah.
Yeah. I felt as being a town clerk, I needed to be involved in the community.
Yes.
And I was also involved with they had a senior citizens centre there, and I was helping with that. We built a senior citizen centre, and I become part of the management of that. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
So yeah,
So it would be very hard, by that example then, to be a CEO and sort of sit in your ivory tower and not be engaged with the community.
I think it's up to the person concerned.
Yeah.
I knew of some who did that, just
Yes.
stayed in there.
And from looking on the outside looking in, were they as effective as what they could be if they were able to, as opposed to get more involved in the community?
Well, it's only my opinion, but I
Yeah.
didn't think so. But
Anything else that, I suppose, as far as good wisdom for LGMA members would be, like, as far as what worked for you being in the CEO role, like, was communication important, delegation, having procedures, systems in place, anything like that?
I developed what was it called, a policy and procedural manual.
Yeah.
The council put it up to one of the LGA annual conferences, and we got an award for that.
Oh, okay.
And I set it out, it was what the policy was, who was to be responsible for implementing that policy, and the procedure of how that went about.
Okay, and how the policy should be implemented.
Yeah.
So prior to that time, I'm assuming that was a gimpy, that there was no cohesive register of where all those policies lived.
There wasn't even a folder where all the policies were set out. No.
Okay, they were just in the council minutes somewhere.
Somewhere, exactly.
Okay. Right. Well, that probably would have helped a lot then, having systems in place.
Well, it did. It meant that everybody knew. Well, all the staff got a copy of that. There was no what level they were at. They all had a copy of it, and they all knew, well, if something came in, or Bill Jones is responsible for that, you go and see him.
Good. So obviously that helped with clarification of roles, responsibilities, with implementing that policy rather than just trying to keep remembering, oh, that's right.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, council made a decision about...
Yeah, we set out the date of the council meeting when the policy was adopted, then set out the policy, the actual wording of it, and then the procedure how to implement it.
So at that LGAQ conference, did that become like the template for other councils to adopt a similar...
Well, we got quite a few inquiries to how to send them copies.
Well, that's another noteworthy achievement as well.
I suppose so.
Yeah. So what did you have to change about yourself or your approach along the way as you've developed?
Yeah, that's a good question. What did I?
Or were you the package deal to start with? Like?
No, certainly not. No, you have to learn to bite your tongue.
Yes.
Quite a lot.
Need some self-control.
Exactly, and especially when you have to have a working relationship with the mayor, whoever the mayor is. It's no good if you're at loggerheads with him. It just won't work. And so you've got to be able to use a bit of diplomacy is probably the word.
Yep.
And I didn't have too much of that when I first started. That's probably one of the big things I had to learn.
Quick to listen, slow to speak, bite your tongue.
Yeah, bite your tongue, especially when you think, geez, I could say something here, but don't.
Yes. All right, very good. Next question, which is, what was the most difficult part of your role as CEO?
I suppose learning how to, handle's not the right word, but the elected members.
Manage the elected members.
Well, that's not... how to... Okay, what's the right word? How to cooperate with the elected members, without throwing away what you should be, without backing down, just learning how to cooperate with them, even though you think they're off on a tangent somewhere that's leading nowhere. But that would be, in my opinion, one of the most, well, if not the most difficult part.
Okay. Any difficulty dealing with the public, or they were easy compared to the councils, were they?
Yeah, I didn't. I had one. I had one bloke who offered to buy me a one-way ticket on a slow boat to China. One way.
Obviously an unhappy camper.
It was. He wasn't happy, but I used to be able to placate him a little bit, and it was just a bit of a joke. But he said, "I'll buy you a so-and-so ticket."
So he was a regular customer.
Yeah, he would come in.
One of those serial ones.
Frequently, but I let myself be available to the public as much as I could.
Yeah. When an issue got escalated, perhaps.
Mm.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there was one fellow who was the president of the Ratepayers Association, and he would regularly want to come and whinge, so I used to sort of let him come in, and he'd go out happy. It was a lot easier to do that than make him more.
Yes, and then have a war of words
Yeah,
through the newspaper.
through
or
the
something.
press.
Yeah.
Spend half an hour with him, he'd go out quite happy. But don't see him and he would be upset. You
Yes, good half an hour use of your time.
know. Yeah.
Damage control. All right. What's the best thing about having a local government career?
It's never boring. I'd never had a day on what in the hell was going to happen. You just didn't know really what
From
the
one
day
day
was.
to another.
No, and that was probably made it more interesting than going to a regular job like in an office somewhere and doing the same sort of work day in and day out. It was never boring.
So is that also, I suppose, one of the necessary skills for a CEO to be able to deal with things on the go as they changed and problem solve?
Yeah, you have to be adaptable to handle these things that you didn't know were going to come up.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's I think an essential part of a CEO.
What's changed in the role of the CEO over the years that you've noticed? Or has it pretty much stayed the same?
Yeah, well, in my time, I didn't see. I believe there's a lot of changes since, but I've been out now for 24 years, I think it is, and so in the time I was in there was not a lot of significant changes. There were changes, but you still were. The town clerk was still mainly the senior officer.
That overarching control of
Yeah.
the council.
He was set out in the Act as the.
So you mentioned you've been out of the game, so to speak, for 24 odd years. Do you miss the cut and thrust of the political interactions?
No, I didn't at all.
You're quite happy to transition to retirement. All right.
I missed some of the people I knew,
Yes.
but not the,
Yeah.
as you said, the interaction with the so-called politicians. No.
And you won't be putting your hand up in the future to run for mayor or council?
Certainly not.
All right, last question. Do you have any advice to newcomers or prospective local government CEOs? Any advice for them upcoming?
I just probably think just stay clear of any political activity, either theirs or yours. Don't
Yes.
be involved,
Be apolitical.
Exactly, yeah. That can be a disaster if you're going to get in any way. Just stay away. Let them do the politics,
Yep.
and you stay away from it.